Good morning. This is Frank with Pro One Investments here, giving you a synopsis of our award-winning workshop that we give on Keep My House or Walk Away. What I did was I went ahead and took the most relevant facts from that workshop and condensed it into 15 minutes. Now, that workshop is over an hour long, but I figured, you know what? We had so many people request a presentation. We had so many people asking for things that I thought it would be the easiest thing for us to do would be to condense it and put it on our website and on our YouTube channel, and this is what we're doing. So, how did we get here? Keep My House or Walk Away is pretty much a product of 3 to 4 years of frustration. We have done modifications, short sales, trustees in lieu of, I mean, you name it, we've done it. And the problem we run into every single time was that at the end of the day, it just didn't make sense why some of these banks made some of the decisions they did. It just did not make any sense. So we figured something else was going on. So we started digging and researching, and we realized that at the end of the day, we really had no power on whether our client was able to do a modification, a short sale, and sometimes not even the bank did. There was somebody behind the bank. And this is what this is going to talk about. It's going to talk about the reality, the facts. My goal to you is very simple. It's for you to get the facts on what the reality of modification short sales are, let you know what the true nature of a modification is, and why or why not you're not going to qualify for it. This workshop might create a lot more questions at the end, which is good. And that's what we're here to answer. But this is where it came to. So the way I broke it down to is kind of a little history of how we got here. Point out the key facts, then break it down to what a modification is and who qualifies, and what a short sale is and who qualifies. All right? So here we go, guys. Kind of excited to give you the facts. Now, remember one thing. I'm only giving you the facts, and I'm giving it to you in a shorter version. I live by the saying that we are drowning in information but starving for knowledge. And the reason you are listening and watching this presentation on your computer is because you want some knowledge. You don't just want to read some more material. So here we go, guys. Let's go ahead and get the important stuff out of the way. And that's the disclosure, attorney stuff. The content in this presentation is based upon our research, knowledge, and experience. In no way is any information contained herein to be interpreted as legal or tax advice. To be assured of sound legal advice with regards to foreclosure, real estate, bankruptcy, or agency laws, please employ the use of a competent legal or tax professional and or your real estate broker. Please consult your broker, accountant, attorney as appropriate for advice specific to your situation. Although every effort is made to keep this presentation current and relevant, it is your responsibility to seek guidance from qualified professionals in order to keep up with the rapidly changing market conditions and periodic change to the law. Bottom line is, make sure you verify what I say, and that's kind of important. All right? So here we go. Who is Pro One Investments? Bottom line, we are a company that focuses in Southern California, only Southern California. It is our expertise. It is our niche. We know it very well, from Orange County to Ollie County to the Inland Empire, which is Riverside and San Bernardino County. We've done a ton of short sales, modifications, foreclosures. We are an REO broker, so we've seen the bank side of it, and we've seen the consumer side of it. We also do loans here, so we get a little taste of what each side has to offer, and that's kind of where we got our experience. We pretty much specialize in giving you your options and making sure that you make an educated decision. We call it, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. We give you the facts, we give you a roadmap, and you go from there. We take the frustration, anger, and confusion away. Let me make something very clear. I am not going to sell you a book, a CD, a cassette, a follow-up workshop, nothing like that. Reason we are doing this is because we have learned through success and failure that you need some knowledge. What do we get in return? We get your business. If you want to do a short sale, then obviously we can help you with that. And who pays us for that? Obviously the bank pays commissions on that. If you want to do a modification, then we can point you in the right direction. We no longer do modifications. We no longer are interested in taking your money up front. We are not interested in getting $1 out of your pocket for doing something that you can pretty much do yourself. So, here we go. Today versus history. How did we get here? All right, guys. This is how we got here. If you look at 2004 to 2007 and you look at the median price, 291,000, 369, 396, 379. That was for Riverside and San Bernardino County. Compared to everything else, it is just almost double. It is huge. Those are the years that we're going to be focusing on this presentation. Those are the years that we collected all the data from. Those are the years that are going to give us our comparison to today and before. Biggest thing here, those prices are double, triple of what they normally are the prior years, if you look at that. All right? California sales history. We've had 3 dips since the 1970s. We had one in the 1980s, and that was a 61% dip. And if you guys recall, that was about a 21% interest rate. We had a dip in the early 90s, and that was when we won against Russia, and we outspent them, is pretty much what it came down to. And the aerospace industry took a real hit here in California, and that caused that. And then, of course, we had this. Again, look at we had over 500,000 units sold. We had a 44% dip, and most of this was caused by Wall Street and speculators, and I'll be going into detail. Look at the rates. Rates since 2000 actually have been decent, but again, if you look at the time period I'm talking about here, when everything was going good, the Feds raised the rates, made more money, and everything else pretty stayed consistent. But the key here was the arms. If you look at the arm, it is going up. And the reason is that's when all the 80-20 loans came in that time. That's when Wall Street couldn't get enough of our loans, and they thought they were making a killing. Unsold inventory. If you look at this time period here, it's really low if you compare it to the early 90s and you compare it to 2008, 2009. Pretty much what that shows you is that more people were buying houses they weren't looking at than anything else. You didn't even have to put a for sale sign and it would sell. And that's what this shows. So it was just going. Of course, then the market crashed. Inventory flew up because all of a sudden those buyers are no longer there. And then we absorbed it, and now we're kind of back to normal, which I guess normal is a relative term. Home sales. Riverside and San Bernardino County, 2010 to 2011, August. Sales are up. Overall sales are up from last year, which is good, but that kind of is a reflection of investors coming in, and I'm going to show in a later slide how that happened. Median home sales prices. Here we go. Look at there and look at there. It's $202,000 right now in the city of Riverside, $135,000 in San Bernardino. It's down about, 6%. Why is that? Well, bottom line is this, there's still a lot of inventory out there, a lot of shadow inventory, a lot of issues we're dealing with, and the one that's taking advantage right now is a cash investor. Where else are you going to buy a house for $100,000 and rent it for $1,100? I mean, it's a gold mine. Net cash to sellers. Look at this right here. This is really what did us in right here. All the speculators went out, bought a bunch of houses, artificially inflated the market, sold it, and made about $150,000 to $200,000 profit. And then, of course, they went out and bought another one and kept doing it until they got burned. If you compare it to the prior years, you kind of are right there under $100,000 profit per house, which is kind of where we're at right now. Net cash to sellers is what killed us. And, the bottom line is, it'd be one thing we took that money and put it to good use. Most of us just spent it. And even though it's good for the economy, short term, it was artificially inflating everything, and of course, everything collapsed. Now, our economy. How is it looking right now? Well, unemployment is at 12.1. Technically, it is at about, I would argue, it is probably at 15%. But the way the government keeps track of it, is really the issue. Until unemployment goes down, our economy will still go the way it is. So, just an FYI. U.S. job growth, if you look, there was this huge dip when the market crashed. That's when we entered the recession, and yes, I called it a recession. And then the U.S. kind of started to bounce back, started to even out. You know, some states were hurt more than others, California being one of them. But then compare that to California. We took the hit, but then look at this. We're up and down, up and down. We're still negative. Unfortunately, I'll show you another slide, but finance and construction took big hits. A lot of unemployment there, and that's not going up anytime soon. Where the California jobs, look at this right here. Construction, almost lost half. Then you had financial, that lost, what, 25%? Manufacturing is huge. Trade, transportation. As long as everybody's ordering everything from China and all these other countries and coming through the ports of LA and Long Beach, we'll have an economy. And that's what's kind of sustaining us because we've become a consumer economy. But until this changes, our economy will stay as is. Now let's talk about current financing. This is very important, guys. Current financing determines who can buy and how much money you need to buy. Now, if you compare again these years, right here, this is the ratio of how much you made to the ratio of what you could buy. Normally, you know, we're maybe at a 5, 4.5 to 5. This was at the peak at a 10. That means people were buying houses at technically twice as much as they can afford. And I guess, and we're all shocked on why we're in this, right? Buyers, look at this. This was a survey that was done of how difficult it was to get the loan. And if you look at it, it's 8 to 9. This is important because what happened was when the banks lost all that money, they went ahead and tightened up their restrictions and made it very, very difficult for people to get loans. Before, if you had a Social Security and you were alive, you got a loan. Now, you got to have everything. You got to be able to prove it, which is fine. But now they've got over and above. Now they're overreacting, which is, I guess, natural, and our government did the same thing. But if it's hard for people to get loans, it's hard for people to buy, and guess what? We're not going to absorb as much as we should inventory-wise. Down payment. If you look at the time period here, what does that say right there? Well, what that says is that, you know, at that time period, the average down payment was $60,000 to $80,000. Of course, the issue with that is that down payment came from a HELOC. It didn't come from people who actually had cash. If you look at it today, 10% down is the average. I guess that makes sense because 3.5% for FHA first-time buyer, 20 to 25%, the average is about 10%. So this is very misleading. Types of mortgages. Look at the yellow. ARMs. That's the issue right there. All those are the ones that are coming back to haunt us. ARMs, adjustable rate mortgage. First-time buyers between this period were almost non-existent. Houses were so expensive, they did not qualify. Now they're going back up. As a matter of fact, the first-time buyer is the majority of the buyers now. So they took away the real buyers who could really afford to buy, and they insulated it with buyers who really couldn't buy, but were taking advantage of the lax financing. Majority of real estate deals, Bank of America, remember they took over Countrywide. If you look at these three right here, that's about, what, 75% of the market held by three banks. That's why the banks got bailed out. They had so much power, so many banks went in, they took over. And trying to keep the economy from literally taking a dive, we made these banks stronger. By the way, it was on your and my tax dollar. All right, look at the volume here. If you look at the average from 88, let's say right here. Look at that. And then from this year right here, it just skyrocketed. What this shows you how many loans were done in volume here in the state of California. Remember, when a loan was done, it sold to Wall Street. Wall Street packaged it up and sold it to investors. And they couldn't get enough of it. So this is why the greed was there. Nobody was worried about can these people pay or not. They were just worried about making the profit. California home purchase finance with 2 or more mortgages. Look, again, pretty stable, right? And then bam, right here. Huge, 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 huge. These are all the loans that got us in trouble. Loan of value on the first loan. Loan of value, again, usually 10. Here you had the loan of value was average 86%. Right now it's back up to about 86%. Look at it here. That's huge. But again, that's also misleading because of the second. ARM purchases. How many people purchased with a flexible? Look how high you got here. Almost 80% at the peak of people were buying with an adjustable rate mortgage. Look where we're at, almost 0%, and look where we go up. FHA, VA. You got to remember, during the peak, it did not make sense to have an FHA or VA loan because the rates, it was tougher to get that loan. They had more restrictions. In other words, they were doing it right. And what happened? All of a sudden, the conventional financing went away, no more ARMs, and everybody comes back to FHA, VA. Typical California mortgage payments, if you look, this is the average. Look where we were at. Bam, we actually got above $2,500. And again, this whole part right here is inflated. So that tells us people couldn't afford a payment, they couldn't afford the house, but yet they were getting the loan. Okay, pay attention here. If this is the only part you pay attention to this. The mortgage industry as we know it is going away. The 30-year fixed loan is going away. You heard me. 30-year loans will be gone, mark my word, in the next 5 years. Now, NAR, National Association of Realtors, and other people are fighting them hard, but here's what's happening. They're going to a Canadian-European model, which says it's pretty much a 25-year loan fixed for 5 years. So every 5 years you got to refinance, period. And the way they describe it is, well, every 5 years people are refinancing right now anyways. So it's not a big deal. But the 30-year-olds are going away. So now every 5 years you pay them more fees, potentially a higher rate, and you got larger lenders that have most of the business. Remember that. So they control it. And it's just going to get harder and harder for us, guys. Just remember that. So what happened in 2011? We had a perfect storm. The tsunami, the debt, oil, political, all that made it for the stock market and everybody else to get beat up, including real estate. All right? So let's talk about loan modifications. Loan modifications. A modification to an existing loan made by a lender in response to a borrower's long-term inability to repay the loan. Loan modifications typically involve a reduction in the interest rate on the loan, an extension of the length and term, a different type of loan, or any combination of three. A lender might be open to modifying a loan because the cost of doing so is less than the cost of default. Bottom line is they're modifying your loan so you could afford it and not get foreclosed on and not be evicted. And there's a few ways to do that. The first one is straight capitalization. I'm 6 months behind. I owe $20,000. My loan's for $100,000. I now owe $120,000. They figure out that payment. It usually is higher. And you go from there. Higher. It's just a chance for you to catch up. That's all it is. Most people, it doesn't work for them. Second option. This is a term extension. This is where they go from a 30 to a 40-year loan. So again, that 100, you owe 20. They put it on there, so it's 120. Instead of 30, do it 40 years. Your payment drops a little. They hope you can afford it. Third option. This is a step rate loan. This is where they go ahead and they'll drop your rate to 3% next year and then 4% the following year, hoping that eventually it gets up to where it should be. This is a lot better. Your payment does go down, but it's not fixed. Option 4 is what people really want, is a reduction rate loan modification. That's where they reduce the interest rate, lower your loan, and you're able to work with it. So that's that, right? Now, who qualifies for that? A statement, well, you got to have a statement showing your willingness to keep your house, a hardship letter describing the event that made your monthly mortgage payment unaffordable. You got to have your ability to afford a reasonable lower payment, supporting documentation, debt-to-income ratio. Debt-to-income ratio right here is huge because you got to be able to show that it's above 41%. But what I want to focus on is your ability to afford a reasonable lower payment. Most people are under the assumption that the worse your scenario, financial situation it is, the easier it is to modify. That is false. If you can't show them that you could afford the lower payment, they will still foreclose on you. Bank incentives to modify. I'm not going to read all this, but bottom line is Obama came for the program where banks get it from $1,000 to $2,000 for helping you modify. Well, that's not enough money for them to modify. As a matter of fact, the money for them is in short sales, not modifications, what I'm going to go into. The problem with the modification is they don't work. Here I kind of put filings. I know it's hard to read with all the cities. The bottom line is here's San Bernardino, there's Riverside County. We are foreclosing in both counties at an average of $3,500 per month. But yet out of those $3,500 that get foreclosed a month, only about 15% get listed. So where's the other 85%? That's what you call shadow inventory. We don't know when they're going to be listed. And this is why I know we're going to have another 3 to 5 years of this. All right? All right, guys. Here's the ugly truth about loan modification, which you don't want to hear. Out of 1 million trial modifications, only 16.8 became permanent. Only 16.8. So that means 84, almost 85% of them, it didn't work. They didn't get it. 90% of all modifications that get approved still end up in foreclosure. That's because at the end of the day, the issue's still there. You still have financial issues. So just because they drop your payment doesn't increase your income. It's an income issue. And so that's what happens. Now, a lot of you have heard of this. 9555-HOPE. That's a number that you call where people will help you. This nonprofit will help you to see if you qualify for loan modification. Problem is that they're there to help you fill out paperwork, but there's nothing else they can do. Let me explain to you why. They are funded by the lenders themselves. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So they will help you. They will tell you if you qualify. They will help you fill out your paperwork for free. As a matter of fact, that's who I would prefer you use because it doesn't cost you anything. Do not pay anybody for loan modification. Listen to me. Do not pay anybody for loan modification. But the issue is this. They don't make the decision. They're just there to push you through the process. The banks will not help reduce your principal balance. Less than 1% of all modifications include principal reduction. Isn't that what we all want? If I'm $250,000 upside down and they drop my payment by $300, I'm still $250,000 down. So what? It's going to take 20 years for me to get even? So who benefits from that? The bank? Those are what we call strategic short sales. People who strategically can afford the house but decide when they're going to walk away from it because they're just too upside down. The lender's not here to help. Guys, they're here to make money. They already lost a lot of it. So guess what? They're not here to help you. The lender, most of the time, is not the decision maker. Bank of America reports to investors. These investors decide what to do with these loans. Okay? So they say, you know what, we're not going to modify. You're not going to modify whether you qualify or not. At the end of the day, it's a financial decision on whether they can afford to take your loss now or later on whether you modify or not. If your income drops, you have less of a chance to get modified. Again, income. You got to be able to make the new payment. If you can't, you do not qualify. Banks use loan modifications as a tool to delay foreclosure. This is an ugly truth. If I know you're going to lose your house and I know I'm going to foreclose on you, but I don't want to foreclose on you for a year for the fact that I don't want it to show in my books, which is the bank's books that I have at loss, I'll work with you for a modification, but at the end I won't qualify you anyways. So what I did is I just bought myself a year. That's what that is. The banks make more money if they short sell. This is huge, and I'll be talking about it in short sales. Banks make more money if they short sell than they loan modification. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have a lot to do with it. Let me explain something to you. If your house is insured by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, insured, remember what I just said, insured, and you foreclose, let's say Bank of America has that loan. Because you're insured, Bank of America gets all their money back. So why would they modify? They just foreclose on you, get their money from the government, and move on. So if you are insured by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, it definitely makes more sense to short sell than it does to modify for the banks because they don't want to keep you on the books. All right, let's do pros versus cons on all this. Pros on the loan modification: payment gets reduced, principal might get reduced. It gives you time with the reduction. That's it. You know, what's the con? 99% failure rate. Only 16% are permanent. Only 1% of all loan modifications actually reduce principal. It speeds up foreclosure. Guys, let me tell you something. If you don't qualify for modification, that's the only bullet you have. So if you come out of a modification, they speed up the foreclosure on you because you no longer can modify. You have no control. You have no control. Even if you qualify, you have no control on whether your modifications can go through or not. Servicer has no control. Servicer is the bank who sends you the paperwork that you send the payment to. It's the investor behind that decides whether you get modified or not. They can delay the process. You could be in a modification for 2 years, and they know internally that you're never going to qualify. All right, short sales. This is where the money is for the banks, guys. A short sale is a sale of real estate in which the proceeds from the selling of the property will fall short of the balance of debt secured by liens against the property, and the property owner cannot afford to repay the lien's full amount, whereby the lien holders agree to release their lien on the release and accept less than they could afford. Amount owed on the debt. Bottom line is, I bought my house for $400, it's worth $200, I sell it for $200, the $200 gets wiped off. That's a short sale. What does it take? The home market value has dropped, that's everybody in California. The mortgage is in or near default status, that's most people in California. The seller has no assets, you don't make enough money, you don't have enough reserves. Bank incentives. Well, if it's insured, I'm short selling. Go find a buyer, because if the loan is for $400 and you short sell for $200, the government's going to give me the $200,000 that I lost, so I didn't lose anything. Servicer versus banks. A servicer is somebody you just send your mortgage to. A bank, the person behind it, is the person who makes the decision. It's all based on what they want to do based on their financial situation. They want to take the loss or not. It has nothing to do with whether you qualify or not. Primary versus rental. If this is your primary residence, it'll be a lot smoother than this was a rental, because different laws come into play, IRS laws and other things. Okay, Obama came out with a program known as the Making Home Affordable, which focuses on paying lenders to modify distressed home. Bottom line is, this is a short sale, what I was talking about earlier, the loan modification. They get money for doing it. You might get cash for keys, but at the end of the day, the government cannot force the bank to short sell or not to short sell, to modify or not to modify. They can throw all the money they want at them, but at the end of the day, the bank still makes that decision. REO versus short sales. Look at this, guys. In August of this year, over, 65% of all deals were some kind of distress sale. And that's going to continue. California water mortgage. Look at this. If you look at this, fourth quarter to first quarter, 30% of all houses are underwater. Those are houses that still potentially are going to be foreclosed on, or they're going to walk away because they're so upside down. So, and look, these are near. So, say 35%, almost half. Distressed properties. In 2011, 59, 20, and 20. In 2011, in California, almost every sale was, I take that back. 40% was short sales and REOs, 60% were equity sales. So about half, again, were regular and half were distressed. Distressed sales in Southern California, look at this. There's a 64 to 62% I was telling you about. California foreclosure filings. Look at this. Of course, this is when the market crashed, right about here. But they're supposedly going down, right? But what I tell you about earlier, if they're in a modification, they don't have to file. What's happening a lot is loans are holding back on filing notice of foreclosures because it doesn't show as a foreclosure technically. So if you look at the average here, we're still about $23,000 per month. That's a lot of people, guys. California foreclosure inventory. Look at this. That's bank owned. Look at everything else, though. Look at the green. Pre-foreclosure. It's going up. We still have a lot of foreclosure. It's over almost 150,000. California foreclosure outcomes. All right. I want you to look at this. Cancellations almost accounted for what? 60%? These are foreclosures that were canceled. What that means is they're in a loan modification or short sale process, and it's just being delayed. These people sooner or later are going to, the shoe's going to fall. So we're just waiting for it to fall. Equity versus REO versus short sale. If you look at them here, these are the percentage of, but I want you to focus on one thing. Look at the price. Equity sells 431,000, REO 240, short sales 287. This is why all the investors are coming in right now. They're getting the houses real cheap, and they're renting them out. Cash sales on the rise. And why is that? Investors are buying and selling. They're in the game now, and they're almost 25 to 30% of it, guys. Absent owner purchases. All right. This is all the speculators. These are all the real investors. These guys bought 2 and 3 homes for the purpose of selling and making some profit. These guys are renting them. These guys know what they're doing right here. So this makes sense right there. Okay, your incentives to short sell. The Mortgage Debt Relief Act of 2007 generally allows taxpayers to exclude income from discharge or debt on their principal residence. Debt reduced through mortgage reconstruction as well as mortgage debt forgiven in connection with the foreclosure qualifies for relief. Bottom line is this, guys. IRS, so this is a primary residence, allows you up to $1 million to write off your loss. This is important because in the 90s, if your house is worth $400 and you short sold it for $200, you would get a 1099 for $200. You had to pay taxes on $200,000, no more. You're good through 2012. So this year, a lot of short sales are going to speed up because people don't want this. Also, California is now stepped in and done the same thing with theirs. So California and both federal are allowing you to discharge it as a loss and not pay taxes on it. So people always ask me, well, if I do a short sale, when can I buy again? Well, the waiting period is up to 5 to 7 years if you foreclose. But if you do a short sale, the waiting period is 2 years. However, if the seller does not have a 60-day late pay, Fannie Mae says that the seller may immediately buy another home, but none of the major lenders will fund such a loan. It's kind of a fallacy. FHA has similar guidelines, but again, major lenders are not stepping up to the plate. I have heard of isolated instances in which a seller relocated for a job transfer and moved within a certain distance to qualify to immediately buy a home after a short sale. Bottom line is this: 2 years. Lenders are not going to step up to the plate because of the fear of losses. So 2 to 3 years, it's a lot better than 5 years. So do a short sale, rent for 2 years, it'll fly by, I promise you. Now, I'm not going to play this for you guys right now, but on my website we have this IndyMac Boys Get a Sweetheart Deal. This talks about how IndyMac was bought by One West because, as you know, they went out of business. And the government is pretty much giving them money for the losses to the point where they're actually making a profit. So if you go to our YouTube channel, go to IndyMac Boys Get a Sweetheart Deal, look at it, and see why short sales make money. All right, what's the pro and con of a short sale? Pros: quick resolution decision, only 2 years of penalty, bank pays all expenses, most qualified, best path, least frustrating, and you have tax incentives. What are the cons? Bank has to make the decision, and 2 is for 2 years you can't buy. Foreclosure is to shut out, to bar, to extinguish a mortgage right, to redeem a mortgage estate. It is a termination of all rights of the homeowner. Bottom line, you lose your property. They change the law to kick you out. You no longer have a right to the property. So what happens to me? You cannot purchase a home using the traditional financing for 5 years and get credit, and your credit gets hit for 5 years. That's what happens if you get foreclosed on. What's the pro? There is no pro. What's the con? Everything. Bottom line is, you need to go ahead and do a short sale. Do not get a foreclosure. Conclusion. What are your options? Loan modification, short sales, foreclosures, and I put in confusion, of course. Now let's talk about your situation. Now, guys, as you heard in my presentation, there's a lot of things going on. Bottom line is short sales is probably going to be your best option. It's the path with least resistance if you're dealing with a broker who knows what they're doing. So I encourage you guys to go ahead and give me a call, send me an email, do whatever you like, contact me, and I'll be more than happy to work with you and figure this out. Because at the end of the day, the whole point is to help you. And if you guys aren't willing to step up and do a little homework, and go with the right realtors or the right people, you end up paying money. So good luck. God bless. And I hope to hear from you guys soon so we can go ahead and knock this out. Thank you very much.